It brings indescribable sadness to know contributed significantly to her fear, paranoia, and isolation.
The room had been prepared for a routine family discussion, but Prince William had not come to discuss schedules, ceremonies, or royal duty. He had come carrying the final private wish of his mother. When William revealed what Diana had truly wanted from her wedding, and what she had hoped Charles would one day understand, the king did not argue. He did not defend himself. He simply stared at his son, unable to speak. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William entered the private room at Windsor Castle with a blue folder pressed against his side. Windsor Castle, one of the monarch's main residences, hosts family talks away from public ceremony. Charles sat near Catherine and several relatives, believing the meeting would focus on how future royal weddings should be presented. The prince knew otherwise. He had come to break a silence that had lasted decades. Diana had entrusted the handwritten message to a close confidant after her marriage began to collapse. That confidant gave William a documented account, explaining when the note was written, why it had been protected, and why it should reach him only when he could understand its weight. A handwriting expert familiar with Diana's letters authenticated the page privately. Charles could not dismiss it as gossip, invention, or confused memory. William opened the folder and began reading. Diana had never wanted her wedding remembered only for its grandeur. She wanted the marriage to prove that a future king could choose emotional honesty over royal performance. She also hoped Charles would one day admit that love had been sacrificed to duty. Royal duty, the public responsibilities expected from senior family members, had shaped decisions around them. Now it stood exposed, as the force she believed had swallowed their marriage. Catherine watched William choose every word with care. He was not attacking his father, yet grief sharpened every sentence. He carried sorrow for his mother, anger over the silence around her pain, and fear that this truth might destroy what remained between him and Charles. The king heard more than accusation. He heard Diana speaking directly through their son. Charles removed his glasses and placed them beside the folder. His fingers tightened against the chair, but no answer came. William then revealed that a second page remained unread. It contained the precise promise Diana wanted Charles to make to both sons. The king lifted his eyes. In a low voice, he asked Catherine and everyone else to leave. As the doors closed, father and son remained alone with the one voice neither could escape. For William, Diana was not a symbol, a fashion icon, or a chapter in royal history. She was his mother. For Charles, she was the woman whose marriage to him had become one of the monarchy's deepest wounds. Now, decades later, her words had placed them on opposite sides of the same table. One man carried the pain of losing her. The other carried the burden of knowing she had once felt abandoned. William stayed seated after the door closed, though every instinct urged him to move. He had spent years protecting Diana's memory while serving the institution that had deepened her loneliness. The monarchy, the system built around the sovereign and senior royal duties, had given him purpose, but it had also taught his mother to hide pain behind ceremony. That contradiction sat between father and son. Charles rose and crossed to the window overlooking Windsor's grounds. He had rebuilt his life, taken the crown, and learned to speak openly. Yet Diana remained the one subject that could strip away every layer of authority. Without turning, the king asked when William first saw the letter. The prince answered that it reached him after a memorial service marking a family anniversary, delivered with a documented account from the woman who had protected it. William admitted he had hidden the message because he feared turning his mother's words into a weapon. He needed to know whether speaking would heal the family or tear open a wound that had never closed. Catherine had helped him reach that decision. By protecting their marriage from silence, he believed he was honoring Diana rather than merely defending her memory. Charles finally turned. He asked whether his son believed he had never loved her. William refused the comfort of a simple answer. Love without courage, he said, could still leave another person completely alone. The words struck hard. The monarch gripped the curtain edge, steadied himself, and lowered his eyes. William opened the folder again. Diana's wish had never concerned only her broken marriage. She feared both sons would inherit a system that rewarded appearances, obligation, and emotional restraint. The second page contained separate instructions for William and Harry, urging them never to enter a royal marriage built mainly around image or convenience. Charles looked toward the unread page, but William did not hand it over. He explained that the letter surfaced because of something the king had said during a recent rehearsal for a major royal wedding commemoration, a formal event created to remember a historic ceremony. The revelation had not emerged by chance. One sentence spoken inside a chapel had awakened a promise William could no longer keep buried. The letter might have remained hidden for years had Charles not entered the chapel and spoken about the past as though it had been settled. Surrounded by candles, polished stone, and carefully arranged memories, the king described his wedding to Diana as a moment of national unity. William stood only a few feet away. He heard no cruelty in his father's voice, but he also heard no recognition of what his mother had endured. That omission became the point of no return. The family had gathered at St. Paul's Cathedral for a closed rehearsal for a broadcast about royal weddings and the monarchy's changing view of marriage. The program revisited an important national event. Charles had been asked to reflect on the 1981 ceremony, and his words focused on spectacle, duty, public hope, duty, and immense expectation. Charles stood beneath the dome and delivered the sentence that changed everything. Whatever followed, that day gave the country hope. William looked toward the place where Diana had once stood and felt something inside him harden. His father had not lied, but he had left out the cost. To the prince, that omission turned celebration into erasure. William stayed behind after the rehearsal, alone in a side chapel. Catherine found him staring at an empty chair while holding his phone, where he had saved a photograph of Diana's handwritten message. He told her that describing the wedding only as hope would make him part of the silence that had swallowed his mother's pain. Catherine listened before answering. She warned him not to confront Charles in anger, because Diana's wish was about honesty, not punishment. The princess understood that truth could heal a family or shatter it, depending on how it was spoken. William knew she was right, yet waiting now felt like betrayal. William then explained how the message began. Diana wrote it after a private conversation at Kensington Palace with a trusted friend, admitting that the wedding had felt like the start of a role, rather than a partnership. Kensington Palace, a royal residence in London, had become one of the few places where she spoke freely. Catherine watched him fold the printed copy. The confidant had preserved Diana's words under strict instructions. William should receive them only when he could separate truth from revenge. His hands shook, but his voice steadied. Then it has to be now. Catherine agreed to stand beside him, though she warned that Charles might hear the revelation as an attack on his reign. By the time William returned to Windsor, the question was no longer whether he would speak, but whether Charles could survive hearing the truth directly from his son. There were no aides in the room, no private secretaries, and no carefully prepared statements. Charles and William faced one another as father and son, stripped of the titles that normally protected them. The letter lay open between them. When Charles finally spoke, his first words were not an apology. They were a challenge. He asked why William had chosen this moment to make him answer for a marriage that had ended decades earlier. Rain pressed against the windows as the clock marked time. Charles believed the disclosure reduced a complicated marriage to one accusation. The king insisted that Diana had not been the only person trapped by expectation. Royal expectation, the pressure placed on family members to protect duty and public image, had shaped them both. William pulled his chair closer. He said the letter was not a verdict on every year of the marriage. It was Diana's final request that her suffering never be hidden beneath ceremonial nostalgia, the habit of remembering a royal event only through beauty and tradition. His restraint made every word sharper. Charles pushed the blue folder away. William caught it before it reached the edge and held it in place. Neither man raised his voice. The silence between each sentence carried more force than shouting. Charles said he had been young, constrained, and unable to choose freely. William answered that Diana had been younger, isolated, and expected to smile, while millions celebrated a perfect beginning. Then his composure broke. He remembered hearing his mother cry behind a closed bedroom door, while adults pretended nothing was wrong. Charles sat down. The memory shook him, because it revealed what his sons had witnessed without his knowledge. His anger gave way to shame, yet William was not finished. The prince opened the second page and read from the documented letter. Diana asked Charles to promise that their sons would never be forced to choose the crown over emotional truth in their marriages. The crown, meaning the monarch and the institution built around that role, could demand service, but never emotional dishonesty. William continued. Diana wanted Charles to admit, privately if not publicly, that the institution had rewarded silence when honesty might have prevented years of pain. The king asked whether she truly believed he had knowingly abandoned her. William held his father's gaze. Diana believed Charles understood more than he allowed himself to admit. Charles looked toward the letter and broke his silence. He remembered the conversation that inspired it, and neither son had heard his version of that night. What began as William's revelation now turns toward Charles's confession, and the truth becomes far more complicated than either man expected. Charles had spent years believing that silence protected everyone. It protected the crown from scandal, his sons from conflicting memories, and himself from confronting the choices he had failed to make. But Diana's letter destroyed that protection. Sitting across from William, the king admitted that he remembered the night behind her wedding wish. He remembered the room, the argument, and the exact moment Diana asked him to choose their marriage over the machinery surrounding them. Charles began with Highgrove, the private country home where the family had once escaped public pressure. During the later years of the marriage, Diana asked him to cancel a formal engagement and remain home for a difficult conversation. Palace advisors warned that his absence would fuel speculation. He chose duty, convinced there would be another chance. Charles remembered standing at the bedroom doorway in evening dress while Diana sat beside an unopened suitcase. She asked, "Will there ever be a day when being my husband comes before appearing to be one?" He understood her pain, yet he left without answering. William listened with clenched hands. Anger rose because his father remembered every detail, but the remorse in Charles's voice disturbed him more than denial would have. The prince could hear that the memory had never faded. It had simply been buried beneath discipline and silence. Charles admitted that advisors, public expectations, inherited habits, and his own fear had shaped the decision. The institution applied pressure, but he accepted it because duty felt easier than facing a marriage already breaking apart. A formal engagement, an official public appearance carried out for the monarch, became the excuse he used to walk away. Charles removed his signet ring, the engraved ring used as a personal royal symbol, and turned it in his palm. He had told himself postponement was not abandonment. Diana had experienced it as a final emotional choice. Then the king revealed the rest through his private recollection of the next morning. Diana had sent him a handwritten note containing one sentence: "Our sons must never mistake silence for strength." He kept it inside a private correspondence box, a locked container for personal letters never meant for official files. William asked him to retrieve it. Charles hesitated because the note proved he had understood the heart of Diana's wish long before this confrontation. At last, he agreed to open the box, but only with Catherine present. Her marriage to William represented the choice Diana had hoped both sons would make. The past was no longer contained in William's blue folder. It was waiting inside Charles's own locked box, preserved by the man who had never found the courage to answer it. By morning, the atmosphere inside Windsor had changed. No official announcement had been made, yet senior staff sensed that something serious had occurred. A scheduled recording was cancelled. Charles withdrew from breakfast. William remained behind closed doors with Catherine. The monarchy continued moving, but its rhythm had been disturbed. Diana's wish had entered the present, and everyone closest to the crown understood that the king now faced a decision he could not delegate. Charles cancelled the commemorative wedding recording and ordered the prepared remarks from the cathedral rehearsal withdrawn. A commemorative recording, a broadcast created to mark and interpret a historic event, had already been approved for release. Staff received only one explanation. The king wanted to reconsider its tone. Confusion spread because schedules had been fixed, and senior offices had already signed off. Camilla entered his private sitting room and stopped. Charles held Diana's old note beside the newly revealed letter, and he made no attempt to hide either page. The queen consort felt discomfort, sadness, and fear at once. Any public acknowledgement of Diana's pain would reopen the years that had shaped all three of them. Charles told her the issue was no longer about defending one version of the past. The monarchy had to decide whether duty had sometimes become an excuse for emotional failure. Camilla sat opposite him and asked whether William expected a public apology. The king answered that his son wanted something harder, honesty without self-pity. William remained with Catherine and explained that Charles had agreed to reconsider how Diana's wedding would be described in future royal commemorations. Catherine then learned about the one-sentence note the monarch had kept for decades. The discovery troubled her because it proved he had carried Diana's warning without answering it. Charles began drafting a private statement for William and Harry. He wrote, crossed out, and rewrote each line until only one sentence remained. "Your mother asked more courage of me than I was able to give." The words came from a written draft prepared in his own hand, not from aides or palace advisors. Charles then instructed his private secretary, the senior official who manages the monarch's work and correspondence, to remove all language presenting the 1981 marriage as a simple national fairy tale. Future material would acknowledge both the hope it created and the pain hidden beneath it. William requested one final meeting. No papers, no staff, no public strategy. This time he wanted an answer from a father, not a monarch protecting history. The institution had begun to move, but William did not want another palace solution. He wanted to know whether his father could finally speak, without hiding behind the crown. The second meeting took place without folders, advisors, or prepared language. William and Charles sat alone in a small room overlooking the gardens, where nothing separated them except the memory of Diana. This time, the king did not defend the monarchy. He did not explain the pressures of his position. He looked directly at his son and admitted that Diana's wedding wish had been reasonable, compassionate, and tragically unmet. At last, he gave the answer she had once waited to hear. William had arranged the meeting because he feared official statements would turn Diana's deeply personal wish into another controlled piece of royal messaging. Royal messaging, the carefully managed language used to protect the monarchy's public image, could soften truth until nothing painful remained. Charles arrived carrying neither the old note nor the blue folder. Without documents between them, both men had only memory, regret, and honesty. William asked one question. Had you understood then what you understand now, would you have chosen differently? Charles paused. Then he said yes. The king leaned forward and rested both hands on his knees. He admitted that he should have stayed at Highgrove on the night Diana asked him not to leave. Highgrove, his private country home, had offered them a rare place away from ceremony. Yet even there, duty had won. William felt his anger loosen. The past had not changed, and Diana's loneliness had not disappeared. But Charles was finally accepting responsibility without blaming advisors, tradition, or circumstance. That mattered, because excuses had protected the wound for decades. Charles told his son that he could never give Diana the marriage she wanted. He could, however, honor her wish by refusing to let emotional silence define the next generation. Then he spoke about Catherine. The monarch said William had built a partnership based on conversation, loyalty, and shared responsibility, the very qualities Diana wanted royal marriage to protect. William lowered his head. He did not offer immediate forgiveness. Instead, the prince said honesty was the first thing his mother had asked for, and the first thing their family had finally given her. Charles then revealed his final decision through a recorded reflection he would deliver personally. He would acknowledge that the grandeur of the 1981 wedding had concealed two people unprepared for what followed. He would also write privately to Harry, sharing Diana's words and his own admission. Neither brother would again be asked to carry only half of their history. The private answer was settled. The public truth was next. Father and son left the room together. Yet beyond the palace walls, one altered sentence was about to transform a private reckoning into a national conversation. The public did not see Diana's letter, but they saw its effect. A commemorative broadcast, once designed to celebrate royal spectacle, was rewritten overnight. The familiar language of fairy tales and national perfection disappeared. In its place came an extraordinary admission from Charles. The ceremony had inspired millions, but the marriage behind it had carried pain that grandeur could not heal. By sunrise, one statement had changed how Britain was being asked to remember Diana's wedding. Buckingham Palace released the revised reflection before breakfast. The statement explained that royal ceremonies must never hide the emotional reality of the people inside them. Buckingham Palace, the monarch's main working headquarters, had once protected difficult truths through careful language. Now Charles was asking it to admit that beauty and pain had existed together. Charles did not reveal every private detail. He acknowledged that Diana had wanted greater honesty, and that her concerns had shaped William's approach to marriage and family life. The king knew the admission would reopen old wounds, but silence now felt more dangerous than scrutiny. A major London newspaper captured the shift in one unforgettable front page. Diana appeared on the cathedral steps beneath the headline, "The Wish Behind the Wedding." Beside her image stood Charles's admission that public hope had never erased private pain. An evening television presenter paused after reading the king's words. She described the statement as the first time the monarchy had separated the beauty of the ceremony from the suffering that followed. The broadcast, a nationally aired program examining the royal response, turned one private reckoning into a public judgment. Crowds gathered near Kensington Palace carrying white roses and handwritten notes. Many thanked Diana for changing how emotional vulnerability was understood inside royal life. Her pain, once treated as disruption, was now being remembered as a warning. William watched the coverage privately with Catherine. When footage of his mother appeared, the prince lowered the volume and fell silent. Catherine took his hand, and he allowed the moment to pass without explanation. Charles watched alone. Exposure unsettled him, yet relief came stronger because he had finally stopped protecting himself through omission. Senior figures remained divided. Some feared honesty weakened royal mystique. Others believed it strengthened the institution by proving it could face failure. The public then learned that William had personally requested the revised language. Diana's influence had passed directly into the future king's vision of the crown. Before the broadcast ended, Charles sent his completed private letter to Harry after decades of silence. When the cameras switched off and the headlines began to fade, only one question remained: not what the revelation changed publicly, but what it finally repaired within the family. Diana's real wedding wish was never about rewriting history or humiliating the man she married. It was about ensuring that the pain hidden behind royal ceremony would not be repeated by her children. William's revelation forced Charles to confront the truth he had carried for decades. The king's silence ended. His son's anger found direction, and the wedding once remembered only for its splendor became something more honest. A warning, a lesson, and finally, a promise fulfilled. Charles completed 2 letters, one for William and one for Harry. In each, the king accepted that he had failed to give Diana the partnership she requested. He admitted that silence had deepened the damage. A private letter, meaning personal correspondence kept outside official records, allowed him to speak without hiding behind ceremony. William chose not to publish Diana's message. Instead, the prince placed it in a family archive, a protected collection holding personal documents. That decision proved he had never wanted public advantage. He wanted the family to understand what his mother had asked for and why her words mattered. Charles returned the blue folder during a final meeting. He did not close it himself. The monarch asked his son to place Diana's letter beside the note she had once sent him. The 2 messages rested together. William felt emotion rise as the archive box closed. "Her words are no longer unanswered," he said. Charles looked at him and replied, "No, they are not." The king was not freed from the past, but responsibility changed him. His silence during the first confrontation had revealed shame. His final answer showed courage arriving painfully late. William had not defeated his father or exposed him. The future king had done something harder. He had forced honesty into a relationship shaped by grief, loyalty, and restraint. Diana's wish stood larger than the marriage that failed her. It shaped how her sons understood love, how the monarchy spoke about emotional duty, and how future royal relationships would be judged. Charles ordered new royal wedding guidance to emphasize mutual consent, emotional readiness, and private support without fear of embarrassment. Royal guidance, the official advice shaping family conduct, would no longer treat silence as strength. William and Charles left the archive room side by side. They did not pretend every wound had healed, but the silence between them had ended. The box was locked, not to bury the truth, but because it had finally been heard, answered, and carried into the monarchy's future. There was no further secret left to reveal. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.